And just like that, the show at SeaWorld Orlando ended. No curtain call, no applause, only sirens. And silence. Elena Raines had spent years building trust with NYX, the park's most famous and unpredictable killer whale. 6 tons of raw power wrapped in black and white. She believed in patience. She believed in the bond. But on that warm February afternoon, belief wasn't enough. What began as a flawless performance spiraled into a real-time nightmare as thousands watched, frozen in their seats, unable to comprehend the horror unfolding before their eyes. This isn't just a tragedy. It's a truth we keep ignoring. You can train behavior, but you can't erase instinct. And when that instinct breaks through the choreography, no whistle can stop it. Before we begin, I want to hear from you. Do you think killer whales like NYX should still perform for crowds? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're here because you want the real stories, the ones that don't hold back, that show you the raw and dangerous reality behind the glass, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to Animal Attack Archives. The truth is already in the water, and what happened to Elena Raines will change how you see it forever. Elena Raines had never stood at the edge of the Pacific as a child, never tasted salt spray on her lips. Yet the ocean seemed to live inside her. While other kids in her small lakeside Florida town chased each other through sprinklers or played video games, Elena sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, flipping through well-worn marine life encyclopedias. She could name every species of dolphin by memory, sketch the arch of an orca's dorsal fin without glancing at a photo, and mimic the piercing calls of a bottlenose pod until the family dog howled in confusion. Her fascination wasn't loud. It didn't come with shouts of, "I want to be a trainer," or posters plastered across her walls. It was steady, patient, like the tide wearing away stone. Her parents couldn't quite understand it. Their world was built around fishing boats, not stadium shows. But for Elena, it wasn't a matter of if she would work with marine animals, only when. That one came on her 14th birthday, when her parents, after saving for months, surprised her with a trip to SeaWorld Orlando. She remembered stepping through the gates, the scent of popcorn and salt water mingling in the air. And then she saw it, her first orca, sleek, black and white, gliding through the pool like a living sculpture. She didn't scream or wave. She simply stared, eyes wide, holding her breath as if afraid the moment might vanish. From then on, the course of her life was set. At 18, Elena didn't arrive at SeaWorld as a trainer. She came with a mop in one hand and dreams in the other, scrubbing railings, hauling buckets, and watching every show from the shadows. She memorized the trainer's hand signals, feeding schedules, and even the subtle pauses that spoke louder than whistles. It didn't take long for her dedication to be noticed. She became an assistant animal care technician, then an apprentice trainer. By her mid-20s, she was standing where she had once stood as a wide-eyed girl beside the water, a whistle around her neck and giants swimming at her side. By the time Elena earned her place on the training platform, she had worked with dolphins, belugas, and playful young orcas. But none of them were like NYX. NYX had not been born into the echo of stadium applause. He came from a world of endless horizons, the frigid North Atlantic, where his pod hunted herring and shimmering clouds of silver. For nearly 2 years, he swam alongside his mother, learning the ancient language of clicks, whistles, and songs passed down through generations. His life was ruled by migration, the rhythm of the tides, and the company of his kin. Then came the nets. One moment he was chasing prey through a blur of bubbles. The next, the water exploded into chaos. He was separated from his pod, lifted from the sea, and lowered into a steel-walled pen. The cold freedom of the open ocean vanished. In its place came the confinement of concrete pools, the hum of filtration pumps, and the constant presence of human eyes. NYX's life became a series of transfers from one marine park to another, each move stripping away the familiar. He learned to follow hand signals, to leap on command, to accept fish as a reward. But he never learned trust. Trainers were warned. NYX had a history. At a park years earlier, a trainer who accidentally fell into his tank never resurfaced alive. The official cause was recorded as an accident, and the incident quietly disappeared from the public record. Some whales adapted to captivity. NYX didn't. He spent long stretches drifting alone, ignoring cues, sometimes refusing food entirely. To most trainers, he was a risk to be managed. To Elena, he was something else entirely, a wounded soul she believed could be reached. February 16th began without fanfare. The Florida sky was a flawless blue, the air carrying the faint scent of salt and sunscreen. Families streamed through the gates of SeaWorld Orlando, clutching maps and paper cups of soda. Children pressed plush Orca toys to their chests as they climbed the stands of Shamu Stadium, the laughter blending with the low hum of anticipation. Behind the scenes, Elena Raines prepared in the quiet familiarity of routine. She pulled on her black wetsuit, checked her whistle, and reviewed the performance cues in her head. NYX had been unusually cooperative all week, hitting every mark during rehearsals, responding to her hand signals with a speed and precision that gave the team a rare sense of optimism. "Maybe he's finally settling in," a colleague remarked. Elena only smiled. She believed the connection they'd worked toward for years was finally taking root. When the music started, the pool shimmered under the stadium lights. NYX breached on cue, sending a spray of salt water over the front rows. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Elena moved with quiet confidence, guiding him through spins and dives that seemed effortless. To the audience, it was a show. To Elena, it was a conversation, a silent exchange built on trust and instinct. For the finale, she stepped closer to the pool's edge, raising her arm for a side-by-side dive followed by a synchronized breach. NYX surfaced beside her, his massive head breaking the water like a shadow rising. She reached out, the final signal. But something shifted in an instant. NYX turned. His jaws closed around the base of her ponytail. It was not violent at first, almost gentle, as if testing the grip. Then came the pull. The water swallowed Elena before anyone could process what had happened. Gasps erupted. Some clapped, thinking it was part of the act. Others froze, their eyes locked on the roiling white foam where trainer and whale had vanished. Elena did not resurface, and the quiet conversation she had been having with NYX was over. Something older, deeper, had taken its place. At first, the crowd hesitated. The stadium speakers still pulsed with music, and the pool's surface was a frenzy of foam and spray. For a heartbeat, it looked like an elaborate stunt, one final burst of drama before the show's end. But seconds stretched, and Elena did not reappear. The first scream came from a child in the third row, small fingers pointing toward the thrashing in the center of the tank. NYX's massive black and white body surged through the water with unnatural speed, coiling and pivoting in tight, powerful arcs. Trainers at the platform's edge froze for only a moment before springing into action. Emergency whistles cut through the music, which stopped abruptly mid-note. Red lights flashed across the stadium. A trainer slapped the water's surface with an open hand. Another tossed whole buckets of fish in a desperate attempt to lure NYX away. The killer whale ignored it all. From above, Elena's body appeared and vanished in erratic intervals. NYX gripped her with terrifying precision, dragging her under, releasing her just long enough for a frantic gasp, then pulling her down again. The water churned violently, whitecaps colliding against the concrete walls like a storm trapped in glass. Parents shielded their children's eyes. Others lifted phones, unsure whether they were documenting a rescue or a death. A handful of guests shouted for help, as if their voices could pierce the water and reach her. Behind the scenes, the code black alert rang through staff radios. Orca aggression, trainers submerged. Divers in wetsuits prepared to enter, but halted at the sight of NYX's relentless circling. Every approach risked provoking him further or pulling Elena deeper into danger. Minutes dragged into what felt like hours. Trainers shouted NYX's name, cycling through every cue he had ever been taught. He didn't respond with confusion. He responded with intent. His movements were controlled, almost deliberate, as though every spin and dive was calculated to keep her within his grasp. At one point, NYX breached high enough for the audience to see her limp form trailing alongside him, her hair streaming in the water, wetsuit torn at the shoulder. The collective gasp from the stands was sharp enough to feel in the air. No one spoke of choreography now. This was no act. The net team finally moved in, trying to section off a corner of the pool. NYX evaded them with ease, diving deep before re-emerging in another section, still clutching her. It was clear to everyone watching, he was not letting go. And somewhere between the chaos of shouts, sirens, and slapping water, a quiet realization settled over the crowd. The woman they had cheered for moments ago might not be coming back. The fight to save Elena was far from over. But in that moment, under the bright lights of Shamu Stadium, the balance between performance and predator had already been broken. 30 minutes had passed before NYX was finally guided into the isolation pool. Only then could the rescue team reach Elena. By the time they brought her to the platform, the stadium had fallen into a heavy, suffocating silence. She was unrecognizable, her wetsuit torn, her body marked by the violence of the encounter. Paramedics worked with grim urgency, but the absence of movement told its own story. A white sheet was pulled over her as the last of the guests were ushered out, their footsteps echoing up the aisles like the slow toll of a bell. SeaWorld Orlando shut down the stadium within the hour. Turnstiles clicked shut. Staff were dismissed and media vans began circling the gates. Headlines formed before the stretcher even left the premises. Trainer killed by killer whale during live show. But for those who had been there, no headline could capture the raw, paralyzing horror of what they had witnessed. NYX floated alone in the center of his pool, unmoving, his dorsal fin slicing the still water like a shadow around him. The pumps hummed and the bright stage lights now felt cold and indifferent. It was as though the energy of the stadium had been drained, leaving behind only the smell of salt and the echo of radios murmuring in the distance. There were no closing announcements, no apologies over the loudspeaker, only the low creak of gates locking and the quiet shuffle of trainers who could not meet each other's eyes. By sunset, the park's laughter was gone. All that remained was the image of a woman carried away beneath a sheet and the deep, unspoken question that seemed to hang in the air. How had it come to this? The investigation began before the sun had even set. Law enforcement sealed off the stadium, collecting statements from staff and witnesses, while technicians pulled surveillance footage from every available angle. What they uncovered was damning. There had been warnings, internal memos from trainers noting NYX's unpredictable behavior, logs describing refusal to respond to cues, sudden aggression during rehearsals. Some reports even referenced earlier incidents in other facilities, but those concerns had been quietly filed away. To the public, NYX was a star attraction. Behind closed doors, he was a risk no one wanted to address too loudly. Within days, the tragedy dominated national headlines. Talk shows debated who was truly at fault. Was it the whale, the trainer, or the system that had put them in the same tank for the sake of entertainment? Outside SeaWorld Orlando's gates, two groups formed. One carried candles and photos of Elena Raines, calling for greater safety standards to protect trainers. The other carried banners demanding NYX's release, their chants rising over the hum of traffic. Free NYX. Animal welfare organizations seized the moment. They had warned for years that keeping apex predators in concrete enclosures was a tragedy waiting to happen. Now, the cost had a name and a face. SeaWorld issued a carefully crafted statement, calling it an unforeseen accident and expressing condolences to Elena's family. But to those who had worked alongside her, it was neither unforeseen nor accidental. Anonymous voices within the park began to speak to reporters, confirming that NYX had shown clear signs of agitation for months. For Elena's family, grief turned to resolve. They demanded accountability, not only for her death, but for a system that had normalized asking humans to trust an animal whose instincts could never truly be controlled. The debate was no longer confined to Orlando. It was a conversation echoing across the country, one that would challenge the very future of marine mammal performances. NYX never performed again. In the weeks following the tragedy, he was moved to an off-exhibit tank. No music, no lights, no crowds. To some, it was punishment. To others, a kind of mercy. Either way, it was silence. SeaWorld Orlando felt the ripple of that silence in every corner. Attendance fell sharply. School groups canceled field trips that had once been tradition. Sponsors quietly withdrew. The stadium that had been filled with applause now carried only the hum of pumps and the echo of water lapping against concrete. Beyond the gates, change began to take shape. Federal safety regulations were tightened, banning trainers from entering tanks during live performances. The conversation shifted not just about one incident, but about the ethics of keeping wild predators in captivity at all. Elena Raines became more than a name in a headline. She became a symbol of dedication, of the fragile line between connection and control, of the price paid when instinct overpowers trust. And now her story belongs to all of us. So, what do you think? Should killer whales like NYX still perform for audiences, or is their place only in the open ocean where they were born? Share your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your perspective. If you believe stories like this matter, if you want the unfiltered truth behind the glass, hit the like button and subscribe to Animal Attack Archives. Because the ocean doesn't forget.